Hello POTA friends, Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike, the Travelin ham. And after 1 year of use in my portable operations, I'm going to share my thoughts on the most popular cons of the Yaesu FT-891. You ready? Let's go.
Hey folks, here's the deal. I'm at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. This is gonna be a special one. We're way up this mountain.
This is the operating station here.
Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike Park to Park.
The traveler has come.
It was a huge, beastly, bulging man. Plates were from Kansas.
Hey folks, it's Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike, the Travelin ham, and today we're going to discuss the most popular cons of the Yaesu FT-891. This is a radio that I got a little over a year ago, and in 2023 it accompanied me on many different POTA and SOTA activations out in the wild.
891 would be real nice right now.
All types of activations, all types of locations, ranging from in the RV to vehicle portable out in the field to picnic table portable out in the field, taking small hikes and even on longer hikes like to the top of Sky Pond and to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And this radio served me pretty well in all situations. So I watched a few review videos just to get a nice list of all the popular cons that people like to bring up when they discuss the 891, and we'll start going through that right now. The most important thing to understand is what was the 891 designed for. Now there's this problem in radio. This problem permeates itself in all subjects. I remember dealing with this issue even when I was watching a lot of GunTube, and that every gun was commented on as if it was for use at a long-range rifle competition. Like if a rifle couldn't make a tiny little hole, you know, a tiny little group of holes this big from 1,000 yards, and it was just totally trash. Even though there's quite a few rifles out there that's not their intended use, therefore it is a silly way to evaluate that rifle. Same kind of goes in radio. There are a lot of cons that are brought up about the 891, but you have to remember it's not a base station. It is meant to be a general use portable or mobile radio. When I say general use, I mean the way most operators are going to use it. They're generally going to be using voice, and they're generally going to be on HF. That's where this radio excels. It does offer you the opportunity to branch off into other directions and try other types of operations, like maybe going farther down a trail carrying this radio. It can do that. It's probably not the best, but it can do that. And if you decide after using the 891 on such an activation that that's something you want to do more of, if you're doing a lot of high altitude SOTAs and you're climbing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet on all your hikes to activate these SOTAs, and all your activations are pretty intense, you will likely decide that you're going to go with a lighter, lower powered radio that's going to take a few pounds off your pack. So we're going to take all these cons and we're going to set them into categories. There are going to be a few that don't matter, period. There's going to be some that are of very little concern. Other cons are issues that we run into when we try to do a little bit more, when we're doing some experimentation with this general use radio. And then there are cons that are just unavoidable, things that we can't mitigate, we can't fix, this radio just can't do. So here we go, let's run through them all. So let's start with the cons that don't really make that big of a difference. Okay, first is the screen. Now keep in mind this, again, this is an activator's radio. This is for use out in the field by an activator who's generally just going to be talking into a mic and not doing a whole lot of dialing and tuning and searching and filtering and things of that nature. You're going to be calling CQ, you're going to be logging contacts. A color screen, a waterfall really doesn't do that much for us in most of our activations. Unless you're a person that's going out and doing what we would call an H&P activation, hunting and pouncing, whether that be in a contest or you're just hunting other POTA activators, these features generally aren't going to do you much as an activator. And even if you are hunting and pouncing, you can spin the dial and use your ears as opposed to using a screen and a scope and do just fine. Okay, another one that doesn't really matter. This is a big one. This gets people all excited. The deep menu, and I'll show you some. I've got here on the radio screen here. Yeah, so the biggest issue with almost anyone with Yaesus is the deep menu. And notice I have it in the category of things that don't really matter. The menu is long. It's enormous. It is categorized. You can see menu 1. It says here AGC, so that's for your automatic gain control. You've got some settings here for the display. You've got settings for keyer, some general settings. They're all categorized pretty well, but it is a huge list. You know, here's some very detailed settings for Morse code. And generally, these are going to be settings that you are going to set and forget. It's not something that you're going to be referring to on a regular basis. If you are, then you're really trying to do some detailed stuff in the field. God bless you. This probably isn't the radio for you. Now there is one. Here's all the EQ, the equalizer settings in here. So I've actually gone in and made some adjustments to those. But here is the one setting in the general transmit section that I wish was not in the deep menu, and that is the power settings. So there's SSB power, AM power, HF power. HF power is basically your carrier, your CW power. Okay, so those are my settings for HF. Now, this is the one I tend to change fairly frequently, and it is a little inconvenient that it's in this menu, but guess what? Let's say I set it for 50 watts. All right, it's set 50 watts. I go back to the main screen of the radio. Let's say a little while longer, I'm doing pretty good. I want to change the power level again. Well, now I got to go back all the way back into this big deep menu, right? Oh, look at that. It went right back to exactly the same spot. I can change my power down to 25. This is the only setting, guys, that I have ever gotten in here to change during an activation. And as long as you get it to that one spot, every time you go back to it, it's going to go right there. And it is not going to be, it's actually one of the more convenient things to access, to be honest with you. When you go to the regular function menus, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 4 pages of things there. And, you know, I tend to start flipping through real quick and I'll miss it and have to go through everything twice to find the setting that I'm wanting to change. So the deep menu, guys, if you're an activator, don't worry about it. Now, there are some situations where you may try to be using the FT-891 as a base station, okay? I live in an RV. Having things that are small and compact and lightweight is a good thing. It could very well be that in the future, I acquire another FT-891 that I use inside the 8-ton radio Go Box. This is not using the 891 at its strengths. This is me compromising and accepting its weaknesses in order to get that small form factor. So there are situations where it could still be a good base station, but that's taking some lumps and accepting some of the weaknesses of the radio. Now, it is a good entry-level price for an HF radio, and that might be attractive to people to start off on just so they can start making contacts, and later on they'll move up to an IC whatever or an FT whatever that's a little bit nicer, and this becomes a portable radio. It's not a bad approach, but it wouldn't be a good long-term base station type radio, and that's where you're gonna run into issues with the deep menu. Activators, doesn't matter. Okay, now we come to the things that cause us a little bit of concern. One of the nuisances about the radio, and it's well documented, is the power connection. It is a pain to unhook that cord, and I'll show you what I do. I've got this Leatherman squirt. This is part of my EDC carry. You'll notice I got it out of my pocket. I have this on me at all times, and it's got 2 little screwdriver blades. Here's a flathead blade, okay? I use this to kind of pry at the little tab on the power connector, and then I can pull it out, or I push it down and then I can pull the wire out, and that's how I unplug the FT-891. But I've always got this on me. It is a little bit of a pain. There are some 3D printed solutions where you can build a power pole connector right in the back of the radio, and that looks like a really slick solution. So you can search for that on YouTube on converting your FT-891 to power poles, and that's a good solution as well. And I just saw a video the other as I was researching for this video last night. I saw a gentleman, his power connection he had on a cord and wrapped around the aluminum rails a couple of times, and he would plug his power into that, and that was pretty slick. That'd be a nice simple solution if you're afraid of opening up the radio and don't want to get in there and make some changes. You can just take your power cord, cut it in one spot, put some power pole connections in that spot, and just wrap it around the rail, and you have it right there, and then you can just use that connection all the time. That'd be a simple solution. This might be the one that annoys me the most about the FT-891. And that is there's some confusing aspects to the controls. There's a number of knobs here that are multi-function. There are buttons that do things if you push them quick, and buttons that do things if you push and hold. And there's been some confusion that's created for me in the basic operation. Like, for instance, I like to program all my channels such that it is all the band edges. So you can see I've got the lower edge of CW 20 meters right there. Then you got the lower end of SSB, the upper end of SSB. Then it goes to 17 meters, the same 3 spots. There's 15 meters, the same 3 spots. And what I would do is I would go in and select one of these, and I used to push this button and it would change to that setting. But you see how it says memory 07CWU? Where this would get confusing is when I would start using, I'd go to the A and B channel and it would change, and then that one that I was on wouldn't be there anymore. So what I figured was that I need to, when I pick my channel, hit that MV button here again, and there you see it says I'm on VFO-A, so then I can change from A to B, and that's still there. Now this, doing it this way and pushing the multi-function knob, that might do something for me. It probably does something different. I don't know what it is. Those are the kinds of confusing controls that I don't like. I've used this enough now. I'm starting to work around these things and figure some of them out. But there's some clumsiness involved in those controls. One other little note that I added in here was that there's only 3 programmable buttons here, which is really convenient to have those. Man, a few more would be really nice. I generally have 1 and a lot of times 2 of those set for voice recordings, for a short CQ, a long CQ. I've also had a QRZ kind of call in there too. I've filled up all 3 with voice recordings, and that can be handy, but then that leaves you nothing for your little filters. So the one I use the most is a noise blanker if a car drives by, and it's nice to have that one on a button so I can just hit that real quick and take out any of that alternator noise that's driving by. A little thing, but you know, a couple more programmable buttons would be nice. Another thing about the voice recording process itself is that it's fairly confusing. I tend to be successful about half the time in getting a recording set, and when you're done recording, you're supposed to hit the transmit button, and a lot of times it just doesn't work. Or if I hit the button to start recording, it doesn't start recording. I hit it a bunch of times, and eventually one time it kind of works. That has proven to be really finicky. Okay, so let's say we use the FT-891 in these general types of activations. We're at our vehicle, we're running voice, we are on a picnic bench running CW. What happens when we start to branch out into other types of operations? What happens when we try to run digital modes? What happens when we try to run QRP? What happens when we try to go miles down a trail or a mile down in the ground, as some of us have done? What kind of cons cause us issues then? Well, when we branch out into digital modes, one problem that we run into here is we have to buy an additional external sound card, something like a digi-rig, plus cables that then we add on to connect the radio to our computers. And like I just looked up today, the digi-rig and the cables to hook up to the FT-891 will run you about $100. So suddenly this radio, the cost now is jumping up a little bit to get that capability. Now in my case, what I have tried to expand out into is two different things. One is CW, and the FT-891 kind of does that seamlessly. No real issues there, just need a key to plug in. But the other thing I've started doing is I start going a lot farther down a trail. I've gotten to where I'll walk several miles carrying the FT-891. We climbed 1,700 feet to Sky Pond over a 5-mile trail to activate that one. Okay, that was a fairly intense hike, and the added weight really made a difference. We hiked down into the bottom of the Grand Canyon and activated next to the Colorado River with the Yaesu FT-891. And these are things that it can do, but it may not be the best at. So again, if I am going to decide that I'm going to do more of these types of activations, I'm going to be going farther down the trail, there's probably going to be another radio for me to acquire in the future. And I do think, in fact, that I'll be going in that direction. There's two big cons that we'll run into hiking a decent distance down the trails. And the first is power consumption. The Yaesu uses about an amp of electricity on receive, which is a decent amount for a portable radio. There are some settings that we can change to kind of get that reduced. We can reduce the screen brightness. I've gone so far as turning off filters and equalizers and any little extra bells and whistles like that to save power. If I'm operating the daytime, I'll just completely turn off, which most of the time I'm operating in the daytime, I will completely turn off the lights on the buttons. I don't need those at all. And that actually saves a decent amount of power. It will use a decent amount of charge as you activate. But again, the radio and its charge usage is good enough that it can be used in a long hike type of activation. Sure, there's other radios out there better, but before we buy one of those, we use our general use portable radio first to see if that's something we want to do more of in the future. I've decided that's probably something I'm going to do more of in the future. So there's probably going to be like a CW mountain topper kind of radio for me in the future, something that's going to be a lot lower power, that you can use much smaller batteries. Having said all that, you do still get a decent amount of use of a moderately sized battery using the FT-891. Here's my case sample. In preparation for my Grand Canyon activation, I measured the length of activation I could run at a couple different power levels to see what power level I wanted to use down in the canyon and how long I could operate. And I chose 25 and 50 watts and found that kind of with either one of those, it didn't seem to matter. I could operate for about an hour 15, an hour 20, somewhere in that neighborhood before the radio died. Now, a lot of people aren't going to run activations much longer than that. And if you're hiking a ways down the trail and you got to turn around and come back, your operating window probably isn't that big anyway. So using my little 4.5 amp hour Bio-Inno battery that weighs about a pound, did me good in the canyon. It got me, I think I ran for an hour and 19 minutes, something like that, down in the canyon, getting 39 contacts. So, you know, with all that said about the power usage, we still got the job done. Could something else have done better? Of course. But the Yaesu was good enough to get that job done. The other issue when taking the radio down the trail is weight. This isn't the lightest portable radio in the world. It comes in at 4.18 pounds, and believe you me, I was feeling that coming up out of the canyon and even going down into the canyon. And then the battery that I had to bring with it added another pound. So the power usage kind of plays into the weight as well. If it uses more power, you got to bring more battery. That's more weight. Lighter radio that uses less power and requires a lighter battery is something that's going to be a good change for me in the future. And there's other times I carried, like let's say the delicate arch activation. I took the 15 amp hour Bioenno battery, so it added another 4.3 pounds. So you've got 8.5 pounds just in the radio and the battery there, and I took that up 500 feet on a 1.5 mile trail to get to Delicate Arch. And so, you know, that's a shortish, maybe moderate difficulty trail, and it was just fine. So again, just keep in mind, it's a general purpose HF activators radio. It's small enough and light enough, it can go down challenging trails. It can fit in a pack. It can be used at QRP levels to reduce the battery power. It's not the best radio for those uses, but it can get you started. Now, the fact that there's no internal tuner bothers some people a lot more than it does others. Me, I'm typically using resonant antennas, so this is kind of a non-issue. But, you know, if you need a tuner, then you're going to have a problem with the Yaesu. Yaesu does make a tuner specifically for the FT-891, but it's over $300, and it's only a 3-to-1 tuner, and it like doubles the size. You know, it's almost, I think it is about equal size of the radio itself. It's almost as if Yaesu designed it just to say, see why we didn't put a tuner in it? So it's really not a great option. It's not a great addition. It's too much money. It's still making the radio big. And so you have all the cons of a compact portable radio, but your radio is no longer compact and portable. So there's really no great way of fixing this issue other than just using resonant antennas. Everything I've used has been a coil, like the Wolf River coil. I've got the Chameleon adjustable 17-foot whip. I can tune that. And I've got the Nelson antennas in-fed half wave. I've got that tuned up so it's resonant on 40 and 20 and 15 and 10. That's really the simplest way to approach that. Now, if you've already got a 10-to-1 tuner, you're good to go. If you don't, and you need one because all of your antennas are random wire, it makes more sense just to buy a resonant antenna or two as opposed to buying a whole new tuner. Now, the big one that we absolutely cannot get around, there's no way of getting around the fact that the FT-891 has no VHF, UHF capabilities. None whatsoever. Nada. Nothing. This is really a perception issue, I think, because of the FT-897, the Yaesu 857, the 991. All of those were popular radios that came with VHF, UHF capabilities. And then this radio came out, and it had none of that. And that just puzzled some folks, and it became a big negative of this radio, and there's no way around it. You just have to get an additional radio. I think what it boils down to is Yaesu knew they wanted to add some features and keep the radio compact, and something had to go. And their research told them that people generally don't use VHF, UHF. Or the people that do use VHF, UHF, as I see in a lot of comments on the 991, they don't care for that characteristic of the radio anyway. They'd rather have the separate UHF, VHF radio from their HF radio. So it just boils down to the fact that the 891 just can't be your VHF, UHF option. Thankfully, most of us have handhelds that we can get by with to handle that aspect of it. This is obviously something that's going to affect SOTA operators more than others. I'm just generally not in locations where there's a lot of VHF, UHF traffic. I'm generally out in the middle of nowhere, and ain't nobody on those frequencies. This is, I think, a real drag for the folks that want to use the radio for mobile operations. Okay, so you're in your vehicle, now VHF, UHF has real utility, and it's not there. Again, some guys might say the same thing. I'd rather have that in separate radios, so I can be scanning and monitoring more things at one time. Again, the radio is a general use portable radio. And by far, most POTA activators out there are on HF bands. So that's it, folks. That is me defending the cons of the Yaesu FT-891. Well, defending most of them. If you're looking to get into portable operations and this is going to be your first portable radio, it is a fantastic radio to use to get started. You're probably not running UHF VHF. You'd be better off avoiding QRP when you're a beginning activator, and you're probably not going to do a whole lot of real intense activations to begin with. It's going to be stuff around your vehicle. It's going to be at a picnic table while you kind of get your feet wet and get your feel for these activations. And for those situations, the Yaesu FT-891 will serve you very, very well. Like anything else, there are some downsides, but honestly, for most of us, they aren't even gonna matter. The deep menu system doesn't matter. Big deal. There are a lot of things that this little radio can do, and it's a great one to get your activation started. This is Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike coming to the defense of the Yaesu FT-891-73. Hey folks, it's Mike the Travelin Ham, and you can now support this channel by going to buymeacoffee.com, and you can buy the Travelin Ham a gallon of diesel. I'll have a link down in the description.
Okay, folks, here's the deal. I'm at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. This is going to be a special one. We're way up this mountain.
This is the operating station here.
Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike, park to park.
The traveler has come.
He was a huge, beastly, bulging man. Plates were from